Right now, somewhere in your house, you can close a door. You can sit in a room by yourself for hours. Nobody checks on you. Nobody needs to. You call it peace. You call it independence. But for almost the entire story of your species, that closed door would have been a death sentence. The real answer to why solitude feels so heavy isn't psychological. It's ancient. It's written into the wiring of your brain by hundreds of thousands of years of brutal arithmetic. And once you see it, you'll never look at the being alone the same way again. Picture a small band of early humans on the savannah, maybe 40 people, maybe fewer. No walls, no locks. No weapons stronger than a sharpened stick. Out there, in the dark beyond the firelight, were lions, hyenas, leopards built for exactly one purpose, finding the human who wandered too far from the group. A lone human was slow. A lone human had bad night vision and no claws. A lone human was frankly easy. The tribe was the only thing standing between a person and being eaten. So evolution did something ruthless. It made isolation feel like dying, not metaphorically, literally. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent decades studying how human brains evolved specifically to track relationships. He found that the size of our social groups correlates directly with the size of our neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thought. Why would thinking power be spent tracking who likes you and who doesn't? Because in the ancestral world, your social standing was your insurance policy. Lose your place in the group, and you lost your access to food, protection, mates, everything. Your brain didn't evolve to make you happy. It evolved to keep your ancestors alive long enough to pass on their genes. And staying close to others was, for nearly 200,000 years, the single best survival strategy available. This is why loneliness doesn't feel like a mood. It feels like an alarm. Psychologist John Cacioppo, who spent his career researching the biology of loneliness, found that social isolation triggers the same threat detection systems in the brain as physical danger. Cortisol rises, sleep fragments, inflammation increases throughout the body. Your nervous system, the same one your ancestors carried across ice ages and deserts, cannot tell the difference between "no one is checking on me tonight" and "I have been cast out and predators are closer than I think." It treats both as a 5-alarm fire. Have you ever felt a strange, low-grade dread on a quiet night home alone, even when nothing is actually wrong? That's not in your head. That's 50,000 generations of ancestors whispering that something is off. Exile was the worst punishment ancient humans could imagine. Worse in many recorded tribal societies than physical punishment. Anthropologists studying small-scale societies, from the Hadza of Tanzania to the Ju Hoanzi of the Kalahari, have documented this same pattern again and again. Banishment from the group was treated as equivalent to a death sentence, because functionally, it usually was. A person cut off from the band lost access to shared food, shared defense, shared knowledge passed down by elders who remembered which plants healed and which water sources dried up in summer. Alone, a human is a fragile animal. Together, humans became the most dangerous and successful species on the planet. The group wasn't a comfort. The group was the technology that let your species survive at all. So your brain built a punishment system to keep you from ever risking exile. We call it shame. We call it the sting of being excluded. We call it that awful feeling of watching others laugh at a joke you weren't part of. Psychologist Kipling Williams ran a famous series of experiments using a simple ball-tossing game, where one participant, unknowingly part of the study, was suddenly excluded by the other two players. Brain scans showed something startling. The same region that lights up during physical pain, the anterior cingulate cortex, activated when people were socially excluded. Being left out doesn't just feel bad. Your brain processes it almost identically to being physically hurt. That's not a coincidence. That's a warning system functioning exactly as designed. Here's the twist most people never consider. The same wiring that made loneliness unbearable also made ancient humans capable of something almost no other species can do at scale: cooperating with strangers. Other primates form tight bonds within small troops, but they rarely trust outsiders. Early humans figured out something different. They learned to extend trust beyond their immediate band, trading tools, sharing stories, intermarrying between groups. Anthropologist Sarah Hrdy has argued that this capacity for wider cooperation, built on top of our fear of isolation, is precisely what allowed bands of fragile, clawless, slow-running primates to outcompete animals that could kill any one of them in a fair fight. The terror of being alone didn't just keep tribes together. It pushed humans to build alliances between tribes. Fear became infrastructure. Consider how strange this would have looked to an outside observer studying early human bands. A wolf pack hunts together, then splits apart without much consequence. A pride of lions tolerates a fair amount of distance between members. Humans are different. Researchers studying hunter-gatherer mobility patterns have found that band members rarely strayed far from camp without a clear reason and a clear plan to return. Wandering alone wasn't bravery. It was a miscalculation that predators were waiting to punish. Over time, the bands that produced individuals who hated being alone simply outlasted the bands that didn't. Comfort with isolation wasn't selected for. Discomfort with it was. Now think about your own life, stripped of campfires and predators, but carrying that exact same machinery. You check your phone not because you need information, but because some ancient circuit is scanning for proof you still belong. You feel a flicker of dread before walking into a party alone. You replay a conversation where someone seemed cold, wondering what you did wrong. None of that is weakness. That is 40,000 generations of survival pressure still running in the background, even though the lines are gone. Have you ever noticed how much heavier a bad day feels when there's no one to tell about it? A modern life has quietly changed the math without changing the wiring. You can survive completely alone now. Food arrives at your door. Work happens through a screen. An entire day can pass without another human voice. Your ancestors would find this almost incomprehensible, not because it's impossible, but because their bodies would have been screaming the entire time. And in a strange way, many of our bodies still are. Think about how recent this shift actually is. For roughly 200,000 years, a human almost never spent a full day without seeing another human face. Then in the span of a single century, that ancient constant disappeared. Apartments replaced shared shelters. Commutes replaced communal walks to gather food. Screens replaced faces. Your biology had no time to catch up because 200,000 years of programming cannot be rewritten in 200 years of convenience. The mismatch between what your environment offers and what your nervous system expects is exactly where that quiet, unexplainable ache of modern loneliness comes from. Researchers studying modern loneliness, including work compiled by the U.S. Surgeon General's office, have found health risks from chronic social isolation comparable to smoking or obesity. The body never got the memo that exile no longer means death. It still reacts as if it does. So the next time solitude creeps in and feels heavier than it should, remember what that weight actually is. It isn't a flaw in you. It's an alarm built by ancestors who didn't survive the night without each other. It's the oldest warning system your species ever built, still faithfully running long after the predators it was designed for disappeared into history. You don't need to fight that feeling or be ashamed of it. You only need to recognize it for what it is. Proof that you come from a long, unbroken line of people who needed each other to make it through the dark. Maybe the closed door in your house isn't peace at all. Maybe it's the one thing your ancestors spent 200,000 years trying to make sure never happened to you.